Michael Singer. Now, I know some of you have already begun reading this book, and if so, I'm hoping that it's beginning to change your way of thinking and being. I know that there are a number of people that are really talking about the power of this book, and in my mind, I kind of see it as a modern version of Don Miguel Ruiz's Five Agreements, because the author, Michael Singer, really works with our thinking and our consciousness. It's really a wonderful way to expand on Unity's message. We have a very strong message in Unity, actually, about personal transformation and the responsibility that we all have in our spiritual journeys to move forward in our transformation, to opening up to the truth within ourselves. So I believe that this book will be really helpful, and I would just want to put in a little plug for our bookstore, and if you haven't gotten it yet, I encourage you to go ahead and get it. We'll be looking, there are 5 parts in the book, and so every week we'll be looking at some pieces from each part. So I'm really excited, and I thought, what better way to start off this particular series but with some of the words from the author himself. He tells us, the chapters of this book are nothing but mirrors for seeing yourself from different angles. And though the journey we're about to embark on is an inner one, it will draw upon every aspect of your life. The only requirement I ask of you is the willingness to look honestly at yourself in the most natural, intuitive way. Remember, if we are seeking the root of self, what we are actually seeking is us. So what an interesting invitation to get to know ourselves a little better and a little more fully. Doesn't that sound good? How many of you would be happy to meet yourself if you had a choice, right? I mean, isn't that an interesting question? And I didn't see every hand go up, but I'm hoping that by the time we're done with the series, every hand will indeed go up. That would be great, because that's really, I'm having a little trouble here. Let me grab this instead. Because that's really where we want to go to, and that's where we want to get to. So that's what I'm hoping. And in order to do that, let us know that we always have this magic moment. The time is now, right? And it is today. So let's go ahead and begin this journey together now and today.
There is no future, there is no past. Thank God this moment's not my last. There's only us, there's only this. Forget, regret, all life is yours to miss. No other road, no other way, no day but today. I can't control my destiny. I trust my soul. My goal is just to be me. There's only us, there's only here. You must let go or live your life in fear. No other road, no other way, no day but today. today.
Thank you, Donovan. Beautiful, beautiful. So that's what we know. That if we're going to find this journey of freedom, if we're going to find this journey of personal transformation, there is no day but today. And so that becomes a really interesting question to me, because when I think about today, I think about all the things that I have in my head about what happened yesterday, what happened 2 weeks ago, what happened 2 months ago, what happened 25 years ago, what happened, oh, there's more than that. But anyway, that way. And I think about what's happening ahead, right? So if I realize that today is what I have, and if I'm going to awaken my consciousness, this is the now moment in which I have to awaken and become alive in it in a different way, so that I will be one of those people that raises my hand when I say, would you like to be your friend if you met you? And how about this? Would you like to be your friend if you met you and you knew every thought you had? Right? I'm not going to ask you because I'm afraid those hands won't go back up, the few that there were. Okay, so that's what we've got to get, that we have all this stuff going on, but we have today. And in unity, what we say is that life, this now moment of awareness, life is consciousness. What that means is that what we choose to give energy to, what we choose to put our consciousness on or in, is what we give life to, and we are living it. But here's the good news. We can always choose well. This is Unity's third principle. Pay attention to what you put your energy into. Pay attention to your thoughts, because your thoughts create your reality. And your reality of what you think is what your consciousness is. So I love to think about this in a powerful way, because I realize that my hand would not necessarily go up either if I had to put every thought I have out on the line and maybe put them in print in the New York Times. Might not like that. And some of the hardest thoughts that I have are towards myself. Is that true for you? A lot. And some of us really resonate with that, yes. Yeah. But it's so true. Some of the hardest thoughts, you know, those thoughts we have about what we should be thinking, what we should be doing, what we should be letting go of. Those thoughts. And then, because we're so generous, then we share that. And then we think about what you should be thinking and what you shouldn't be thinking and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And so we spread the love in that way, and it makes for a big mess, yeah. So, as Michael Singer says, as we begin to pay attention, to what we think about and what we put energy into, we then develop a new choice that can lead us to freedom from the bondage of the ever-chattering mind. For in order to begin to live an awakened consciousness, we've really got to pay attention to what we give life to. And so he tells us, and I find this so fascinating, but he tells us that we have an inner voice that is always going on, as if we didn't know that, but it was very nice to read. But you know that inner voice that is always talking? That inner voice that we sometimes agree with, that we sometimes argue with, that we sometimes are annoyed about, sometimes we're afraid of it. Have you ever been that person, and you know what I mean by that person, who you are alone and you start answering that inner voice? I knew that Val had done that. I just had a feeling. I just knew that she has done that. But anyway, we have that inner voice that we're always talking to, that's always talking at us. I mean, sometimes we can't ever do a good thing without it saying, well, you could have done that better, or you should have done that earlier. And sometimes if we do something we're not satisfied with, that same voice says, see, I told you you wouldn't be any good at that. Or it says, you're doing great at that, but look at how somebody else does that better. And oh, you know, that voice, it's so smart. And I always wondered about this. You know, we call it critical thinking, and we think that makes us smart. And a lot of times when we say critical thinking, we don't necessarily mean highly intelligent or logical thinking. A lot of times we actually mean critical thinking, and we think we're so smart. If you're a Virgo, you know what I mean. I'm a Virgo. So, you know, that part, that's that inner voice. That's that part of us that chats and chats and chats and chats. So I have a little mini exercise for you today. Think back, let's just say the last hour, to what your inner voice had been saying to you. Think about where you were when you woke up. What did your inner voice start saying to you? What were the thoughts you had as you were getting dressed and showering and perhaps having some breakfast? What were the thoughts that you had when you were in the car? Because I assume you didn't walk here, but if you did, or as you were walking? What are the thoughts you had when you walked in the door? And what were the thoughts you had about the people that you met, the people you talked to? There's a lot of chatter, right? And sometimes we have all of these thoughts like, yeah, that's good. What do they really mean? Or we think, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And we have all of these thoughts that go on and on that then we attach emotion and energy to. This inner voice is really pretty intense. Michael Singer has a wonderful way of describing it sometimes. And he says that this voice is sort of like an inner roommate. And I really love that concept of the inner roommate. Because if you have that voice that chatters, and if you give that voice a name, it's sort of like over there in the other bedroom. And this is something that the Unity leadership team, those individuals involved in committing to becoming licensed teachers or ministers in our community, but it is something that they have begun to do, and they've given their inner roommates names. And so one has the name of Ruby, another one has the name of Isis, another one has the name Derek, another one has the name of Silly Sally, and another person has a name that I can't say on Sunday from the platform. But you see, they all have names, and when I can make that roommate have a name, what happens is I don't have to always listen like it's telling me the truth, or that I can choose to elect whether I want to give my roommate. Mine happens to be Margot, and I might tell you that her name Margot is not just M-A-R-G-O, but she's like M-A-R-G-A-U-X. I don't know why, but that's her name. And she's not just Margot like Fargo, she's Margot. And I'm like, whatever, lady. But you know, Margot. But when I listen to Margot, first of all, I don't know about you, but I can't take someone like that seriously. So Margot is speaking to me. So when you have an inner roommate and you give that roommate, that chatter, 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 a name, what happens is you already have taken the first step away from that bondage to feeling as if you blindly have to answer. Because we so often feel like we have to answer to that inner voice. Do you see what I mean? So take a minute, and I invite you to close your eyes. And without any preparation of favorite name, most hated name, nothing like that, listen to what the name is that comes to you. And let it be the name of your inner roommate. Do you hear it? So as we allow ourselves to have that name, and if the name didn't come to you, know that you can invite the name to come later. And start to feel, even in this moment, the freedom that comes from not feeling the bondage to listening to that chatter as if it were the truth of who and what you are. Michael Singer tells us this. He says that our mind talks all the time to that voice. We try to control it. We try to avoid it. We try to ignore it. We try to agree with it. We do all sorts of things. But he says, here, pay attention to this. That voice was here long before you came, and it will be here long after you leave. For true personal growth is done in constantly remembering that you are the one inside that begins to notice the voice talking. When you start moving into knowing that you are the one that's paying attention to the voice, what happens is you become aware. And you begin to watch the voice talking, and you begin to pay attention to it without feeling or emotion. You simply notice it. And so he invites us. He says, come to know the one who watches the voice, and you will come to know one of the greatest mysteries of creation. You will know yourself. A great example of one who taught us all the way of how to be an observer, of how to watch the inner voice as a path to inner peace and freedom was none other than Siddhartha Gautama, otherwise known as the Buddha. This was indeed the Buddha's path. The Buddha was born 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Jesus. And he was born into a wealthy family. His mother had been a queen. And he lived a life of great opulence. But there was a stirring in him that all the things he had and all the comforts he knew were not enough. You see, there was an emptiness. And one day, after day, he really gave notice to a monk that he saw that had nothing in the world. And yet this monk's countenance was so peaceful, so serene, so loving, so generous with anyone and everyone. And he looked at this monk and he said, I don't know what it is he has. I don't know how he got there, but I want that peace. And so at age 29, he left his family, and he left all that he knew, and he began his spiritual journey. He recognized that there was suffering in the world, and the suffering came from the thoughts he held on to and put energy into. It came from judgments. It came from criticism and hatred and all those things. And he recognized that the more he held on to those thoughts and those notions and ideas, he was always miserable. the Buddha recognized that this was not the way of true transformation and peace. And by the time he was 35, he had an amazing experience and he became quite enlightened. And he spent the next 45 years of his life teaching others what he had learned. The Buddha had an interesting life, you might say. And there is a well-known story in which a monk asks him out of amazement, and he says, "Are you a god?" And the Buddha said, "No." And the monk said, "So, are you a saint?" And again, the Buddha replied, "No." And so he asked one more time, and he said, "Then what are you?" And the Buddha said, "I am awake. I am awake." I invite us all today to choose to become awake. I invite us all to begin as the way the Buddha did, by paying attention to thoughts and not attaching our identity, our true nature, which is that we are so sacred and so pure and made of God. Today is the day that we release anything that we hold in our mind by the roommate that tells us we are not of God. And we do this by remembering some wonderful words from Michael Singer. He tells us that true personal growth happens when we constantly remember, not just on occasion, but we make a commitment. True personal growth happens when we constantly remember that we are not the voice constantly talking inside us. That is the first big step, is we release our identity and our commitment to that inner voice. It is an amazing, amazing thing to understand that. He also tells us this. He says, what differentiates a conscious, centered being from a person who is not so conscious is simply the focus of their awareness. When you are a centered being, your consciousness is always aware of being conscious. It is the commitment that you make. And so today, that is indeed the commitment that I invite us all to hold to more fully and more powerfully. I want to share with you these words from 1 John. It was a letter in the 4th chapter, verses 4 and 5, because I think when we use these words and apply them to our commitment to not let our roommates, that inner voice, run us and lead us, because we remember that those words of the roommate are of the world. It is what we call collective consciousness, or as Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, would have said, race, human race consciousness. And so when we hear these words, take them into your heart. Dear one, you are from God, and you have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. Know that you are from God, and you can overcome those thoughts and those ideas and beliefs that you have held yourself hostage to, because you can remember that you are from God, and the God within you is greater than that which is from the world. There's no other day but today. And there is no other time but now. And we make a choice of how we want to live. Do we open ourselves to an awakened consciousness that is free, that is liberating, that is indeed of our sacred worth and our sacred identity? That is the question before us. And so I invite you to make that choice and to live today in a life filled with God consciousness. Thank you, and God bless.
There's only us. There's only this. Forget, regret, or life is yours to miss. No